Easter is a time of symbolism, a representation of new beginnings. Its origins stem back 2,000 years to a place half a world away. Over the past decade, it has lent itself to a new tradition, one steeped in sweat, triumph and pain. Each year, Good Friday marks the start of an extraordinary test of endurance, where men and women pit themselves against the vagaries of nature. It is a challenge of almost biblical proportions. It is the Examiner Three Peaks Race. The Three Peaks race traces its origins back to the United Kingdom and the vision of Welsh seaman and mountaineer Major Bill Tillman. 17 years ago, the idea spawned a sailing race linking the highest peaks in England, Scotland and Wales. The translation to Australian conditions was swift, and to this day, the Tasmanian Three Peaks race is the most faithful representation of the original concept. In its history, the race has had three constants: the course, incorporating Mount Strzelecki, Mount Freycinet and Mount Wellington, and the Edmonds brothers, Richard and Nick. The two laconic skippers from Sidmouth have contested every single Three Peaks race. Nick won the event in 1991 and Richard holds the race record from his victory in 95. They sail identical design Radford 14-metre yachts and in the 2000 event will again be at the front of the fleet. The Three Peaks race consists of three sailing legs totalling 335 nautical miles and three mountain runs, a combined distance of 131 kilometres. Teams are comprised of 5 individuals, generally 3 sailors and 2 runners, although it's not always that simple. On numerous past occasions, sailors have been forced to complete one or more of the runs after their team's designated runners have succumbed to illness or injury. In 2000, 11 crews faced the traditional 2 p.m. cannon at Beauty Point. In the hours leading up to the start, an optimism is growing among the skippers. A fresh southwesterly breeze promises the trip to Flinders Island should be a quick one.
Actually, they're looking for a pretty quick race. Yeah, we've got southwesterlies today, which should hang in until later Saturday with a more of a westerly change, which will help us going down the east coast.
Looking forward to a quick one after 30 hours to Flinders last year. Getting there by midnight would be quite okay.
But while the skippers hope for a fast sail to Lady Baron, it presents the runners with more of a dilemma, facing the daunting 65-kilometre run up Mount Strzelecki in the dark. For second-time competitor Ian Meikle, it's not such a pleasant thought.
The mountain, not so much, but it's a nice flat run there and from there back to the finish line. But yeah, not in the dark, because climbing a mountain doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but we'll wait and see.
As the boats jockey for the best line position prior to the start, a minor spanner is thrown into the works. A giant wood chip carrier leaving port at Bell Bay forces organisers to postpone the start. The prospect of being run down by the iron monster dictates that discretion plays the better part of valour. 20 minutes later, with the coast clear, the cannon sounds to begin another chapter in the history of the Examiner Three Peaks race.
There they go. Have a safe voyage, everyone. Fantastic.
Aside from the Edmonds brothers, 2 other teams are given a real chance of taking outright honours. Peter Hesketh and his runners, David Ross and Mark Rapley aboard Maintenance Systems, are genuine contenders. The Adams 13 comes close to matching the speed of Haphazard and Southern Cross, and Ross and Rapley will be the ones to beat on dry land. But the stiffest opposition could well come from one of the smallest boats in the fleet. Philip Marshall's brand new 30-foot catamaran D&D Tolhurst. The boat boasts amazing speed with the wind on her beam, and if conditions suit, there may be no catching the little cat. Back in the pack, the Classic Division entrants Island Fresh and Royal Oak Rona H provide their occupants with a more genteel experience. The Classics are allowed to use their engines to stay with the fleet, but aren't eligible to win the race. One of the early honours in each Three Peaks event is the title of first out of the river. Haphazard led from the start, but with ideal conditions, the catamaran D&D Tolhurst, in its first competitive outing, proved she has the speed to match the bigger boats and led the fleet into Bank Strait. First points to the Cat. Nick Edmonds had Haphazard in second, with Southern Cross hard on their tail. Maintenance Systems and Victorian entry Dirty Rotten Scoundrels rounded out the top five as the fleet left the confines of the Tamar River, popped the spinnakers and set sail for Flinders Island. Conditions for the sailing leg to Lady Baron on Flinders Island were just about perfect. Southern Cross, Haphazard and D&D Tolhurst led the fleet as day turned to night. By the 11 p.m. radio schedule, the top three were well into Franklin Sound. The Cat, D&D Tolhurst, the first to unload her runners onto the Lady Baron wharf, giving David Kent and Les Savage a slim but useful 5-minute lead.
The trip was fast. Yeah, it was very fast. We didn't get a lot of sleep.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes.
We've only got a couple of minutes. But no, it was an excellent trip. She's a beautiful little cat.
Nick Edmonds won the first round in the Battle of the Brothers, bringing Haphazard in second. Runners Mick Lee and Scott Inglis now given the task of catching the Cat. Lurking ominously just behind them, Southern Cross, the top three teams separated by only 10 minutes. The first boat out of Lady Baron would be decided on the long, lonely roads of Flinders Island. For the sailing crews, a few hours to rest and recount the Bank Strait crossing.
Oh, very good trip. Hit 20 knots 3 or 4 times. Blew a spinnaker, wrapped one up round the forestay. We've had a good night.
Out on the road, the D&D Tolhurst runners had made it to the bottom of the mountain and were brim full of confidence.
They won't catch us. They won't catch us. You're not worried about the running?
Prepared to say from here they will not catch it.
They won't.
But just behind them, the highly fancied running pair of Paul Stancombe and Steve Bentz from Southern Cross had already passed Haphazard and were fast making ground. The pair suffering no ill effects from the rough 10-hour sailing leg.
Nice roller coaster ride. Very fast. We've got to get one here before at 11 o'clock and it's only about midnight now, so we like running in the night when it's cold. That suits us pretty well.
And as for running in the dark, Steve Bentz, now in his 4th Three Peaks campaign, wouldn't have it any other way.
I've run this mountain 3 times and never seen the view.
Behind them, Mick Lee and Scott Inglis from Haphazard were just hoping to get the first run out of the way.
Just get round it. Just get round it. Finish it. Nice. Yeah. It's always a tough one, the first one. You just got to be conservative on the way out. Make sure you finish. A few beans left and get stuck into that next one.
Back at the wharf, the classic entrant, Island Fresh, was next in. She was creating a bit of a history herself this trip, carrying not 2, but 4 runners, Team Big and Team Small. Behind them, but 4th outright, Maintenance Systems had docked. Runners David Ross and Mark Rapley were expected to be one of the quickest pairs, although neither seemed to be too sure of the game plan.
You got a game plan? Get there. Yeah, we got a game plan. No, try and look after ourselves until the bottom of the mountain. And then if there's anything left after that, try and get home.
As darkness gave way to daybreak and the sun warmed the Flinders Island sky, the events of the night quickly became clear. The Southern Cross runners Stancombe and Bentz had passed Haphazard and D&D Tolhurst. For the first time in the event, Richard Edmonds was in front with a break on the fleet.
It's always handy to have a break. We rely on our runners at time to help us out.
Southern Cross timed her run perfectly with the tide out of Franklin Sound and onwards to Coles Bay. Back on the road, the boys from Haphazard had taken second spot, but big Scott Inglis, the shearer from Clarence Point, was doing it tough.
Hog stuff. This fella here with the short legs is just too powerful for me. No, he's all right. We're still in it. They haven't got much of a lead on us. Anything can happen on the water. Don't they? That's right.
Inglis had aggravated stress fractures in the bones of his right foot. The final few kilometres back to the boat was testing his mental toughness to the limit. His sense of humour, though, was remarkably intact.
I think the first 65 k's were the hardest.
Once you come off the mountain, I think, to start the trek back, you know, all the hard work you've done to get out there and climb up, it takes its toll on you.
There's a lot of blood in the legs. It's out of hand, really.
Back at the boat, haphazard skipper Nick Edmonds was unaware of Inglis's troubles and feeling quite relaxed.
Well, as long as we're out of here within a couple of minutes of them, I'll be happy.
On board D&D Tolhurst, news of the prediction by their runners that they couldn't be caught was causing a few laughs.
It's a brash statement by the runners. Obviously they weren't on deck last night. Put it this way, we're not going out to set any records. We want to get to Hobart in one piece, and like, we don't know what the boat's capable of. Last night, we had a couple of spurts at 18 plus. It's got a lot of power in the rig for the weight of the boat.
Out on the road, Les Savage and David Kent were in good spirits despite having dropped 2 places, their thoughts turning to the eternal Three Peaks question, why?
I'm not sure. This is my 8th year I've done it. Hoping to complete 10. David's done it 2 years. It's his 3rd. We've both competed in marathons, finished them, won them. Keeps us fit.
It's a physical challenge, I think. Just been able to do it. It's nothing better than getting to Hobart.
Southern Cross had gotten away first, but the falling winds cut her advantage. Haphazard and D&D Tolhurst were in hot pursuit. Maintenance Systems had clocked the fastest run on Strzelecki, and with the lighter conditions was well placed in 4th. Diamond Drilling Family Express was the 5th boat to leave Flinders Island. In failing wind, the many islands, reefs and sandbars south of Flinders Island become a yachtsman's nightmare. In the past, dozens of ships have been lost in these unforgiving waters. Luckily, a Three Peaks yacht has one thing that none of those old sailing ships had, a secondary means of propulsion. Despised by the crew, the bikes give at least some headway in light air, but it's a long way to Coles Bay at less than 1 knot. Haphazard had taken the lead from Southern Cross and was the first boat into Coles Bay. The 3 leading boats had been locked together since leaving Flinders 24 hours earlier.
Yeah, all the way down the coast. Changed leads about 4 or 5 times on the way down. It's good tussle.
D&D Tolhurst had also overhauled Southern Cross, but there was only a minute between the two.
Really match race and stuff, isn't it? Yeah, you know, well, we kept the pressure on. I mean, we didn't let them sort of get away, and it's the best we can do.
The D&D Tolhurst runners described their frustrations before disappearing into the bush for another torturous 35-kilometre mountain trek.
Got a bit of breeze. It was a good breeze. So we was an hour behind the other 2. So we passed them, then they passed us. And just lacked a bit of breeze towards the end.
Southern Cross runners Paul Stankham and Steve Bence were going to have to perform well for Southern Cross to regain the lead, and they looked to be in good form, first passing D&D Tolhurst,
Have a good run, mate. Yeah.
then catching Haphazard on the foothills of Mount Freycinet. Providing there were no accidents, Stankham and Bence would deliver back the lead to their skipper Richard Edmonds at the end of the Coles Bay run. The pair were proving to be the class runners of the top 3 teams. Haphazard had another problem. Scott Inglis had been forced to rest his fractured foot for the second run. Three Peaks veteran David Wright called upon to perform the running duties up Mount Freycinet. Island Fresh was the next in, her runners forced to take to the dinghy to make their way ashore. An unpleasant chore for the 4 who were already feeling a little green around the gills. The 21-metre schooner may have all the luxuries of home, but there's no hiding from seasickness.
It was a little bit swelly, just like going up and down, so I don't think Lawrence was probably the best out of us, but a few of us was feeling slightly under the weather, so we slept most of the day and the night.
Maintenance systems had been out of radio contact since leaving Flinders Island due to a faulty aerial, but had made up some ground on the leaders.
They were good runs last night, a lot better than what we thought we were going to get. It's a reach down the coast quite quick, and a run up the bay this morning.
Mark Rapley and David Ross had been fastest on the first run and hoped to repeat the performance.
On Flinders, we managed to come back pretty well after getting up the mountain. I think that's where we made up a bit of time. Took it fairly slow around to Ran to the bottom.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and Diamond Drilling Family Express made their way into Coles Bay locked together. John Alexander, the Scoundrel skipper and a Three Peaks rookie, has his own connection to the event.
I come from the Lake District in England, of course, and the middle peak, as this is the middle peak, is Scarfell Pike, which I used to live 5 or 10 miles from. I always used to watch them do it and thought maybe one day, but I had to move to the other side of the world and moved to Australia to do it.
As the biggest boat in the non-classic fleet, Dirty Rotten Scoundrel would be too difficult to manhandle through the shortcut at Dunalley Canal. She would have to travel the long way to Hobart around Tasman Island.
That's right, we're going around the bottom, no choice. And if this weather stays like this, so it'll be pretty bumpy.
Southern Cross runners Paul Stankham and Steve Bentz were the first to return. They had turned a 5-minute deficit into a lead of more than an hour. Richard Edmonds was now in the box seat to win his second Three Peaks race. Haphazard was the next to go. She trailed Southern Cross by an hour and 10 minutes, but she'd shown before she had the speed to reel in the leader. D&D Tolhurst skipper Philip Marshall would also have to play catch-up. He was almost 2 hours behind Southern Cross and would have to take a risk on Dunalley Canal if his runners were going to hold off Southern Cross on Mount Wellington.
If we can get through the canal and very quickly without any hold-ups, I'd say we're in with a shot, but we'll just give it the best shot and see what happens tomorrow.
The Cat would also have to endure her least favourite conditions, punching straight into a fresh, cold 20-knot southerly. At 2 o'clock, disaster struck. Unconfirmed reports of a dismasted yacht near Shooten Island became confirmed reports. Southern Cross, the race leader, had lost her mast. Haphazard was the first boat on the scene, and to the relief of everyone on board, the Southern Cross crew had escaped serious injury. Nick Edmonds, coming to the rescue of his older brother, was able to tow the stricken Southern Cross to face the oncoming waves, allowing the salvage of thousands of dollars worth of sails and rigging. With the loss of Southern Cross, the race had taken on a new look. Haphazard and D&D Tolhurst out in front. Maintenance Systems third with Diamond Drilling Family Express 3 hours ahead of 5th place Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Nick Edmonds had lost 25 minutes helping the crippled Southern Cross the day before, and to make matters worse, he'd been forced to sail the long way to Hobart around Tasman Island. The shortcut at Dunalley had been ruled out due to unfavourable winds. But despite the setbacks, it was the unmistakable orange-hulled Haphazard that led the fleet into the heart of Hobart just before 11 on Easter Monday. Despite the fractures in his foot, Scott Inglis was determined to partner Mick Lee for the final leg.
Look, I'm sort of looking forward. I'd be looking forward to it if I wasn't running with this little short fella because he's just so fast. Apart from that, a little bit footsore, but not too bad.
With the second boat still not in sight, the pair would be able to set their own pace on the mountain, although disappointed that there would be no grandstand finish with Southern Cross.
Very disappointing, it was. We were really looking forward to having we were right hot on their hammer again already and looking forward to having a good race with them. But that's just racing, isn't it? You push the boats a bit hard and things happen.
For Nick Edmonds, the job was done. Haphazard had a 3-hour lead over the next boat, and the decision to take the long, rough path around Tasman had paid off.
Left our options open, sailed down inside Maria and across to the Narrows and was blowing good 35 then. It was just a waste of time even thinking about going in. And we knew we had a bit of a gap, so we weighed up the extra distance we were going to travel and went for it.
But again, the approaching victory was tempered with a little sympathy for his brother and the crew of Southern Cross.
We went through a couple of real short, sharp waves that shook the rig pretty badly, and next thing down it came.
A bit disappointing. We sort of saw his sail and we felt like we were picking up a bit of ground on him. He was heeled over pretty well and he must have had different sails onto us, and then all of a sudden, right, he saw the boat. He said, she's lost a mast, and then all of a sudden the sort of pressure went out of the race. We sort of weren't striving to catch anyone, and sad looking things to the mast laying over the side.
On the mountain, Scott Inglis and Mick Lee had reached the summit, their journey now all but complete. The final 15 kilometres downhill to the finish, all between them and victory in one of this country's ultimate endurance challenges. The ever-reliable Maintenance Systems was the next boat in. Peter Hesketh had also decided to avoid Dunalley Canal, preferring to take the longer options, but fluky winds on the Derwent had sunk their chances of snatching victory.
Yeah, so I'd like to put a little bit of pressure on Nick. We thought we had the cat covered. We passed him last night, and we would like to put a bit of pressure on Nick, but wasn't to be.
Trailing by over 3 hours, David Ross and Mark Rapley would have to console themselves with the King of the Mountain award for the fastest aggregate running time. They'd been fighting it out with Paul Stancombe and Steve Bentz from Southern Cross, but their challenge snapped with the mast at Coles Bay. David Ross taking his inspiration from Barry, the stuffed gorilla, a seasoned distance athlete.
He's done a couple of 3 peaks, done a couple of Cradle coasts, and at least one Cradle Mountain run, I think. So he's a well-experienced and travelled gorilla.
At the bottom of the mountain, Mick Lee and Scott Inglis were approaching the finish line. In a tribute to the toughness of Inglis, the haphazard runners would not only complete the run, but also do it in good time. The rest of the crew, David Wright, Nick and Sam Edmonds, joining them for the final run to the line. Celebrations all round for the haphazard crew and the end of an 8-year drought for Nick Edmonds.
I didn't really realise what we'd done in 91. I do now, and it's just nice to win it again and know what it's all about. And the young fellas, they've got a win for them. It's not me. I've won one, but they hadn't, so it was good.
Mick Lee paying tribute to the haphazard team, which now boasts a combined 37 races of experience.
We're all part of the team, and it could have been me on any one of the legs. You know, we said that before we set out. If we talk, if anyone gets into any sort of difficulty, well, you know, you help one another out. It's all part of the race. You know, there's 5 people there, not just runners and sailors independent. We're all a group.
As for Scott Inglis's fractured foot, the pain unlikely to hinder the celebrations too much.
Yeah, I can't see my foot getting in my way tonight. I reckon I'll have a few painkillers, and I reckon I'll be able to just do a little bit of dancing or something later on.
David Ross and Mark Rapley crossed the line in second. Their run time of 3 hours and 22 minutes sealed the Kings of the Mountain title and second overall for the Maintenance Systems team. Third outright went to the Derek Newington skippered Diamond Drilling Family Express. The sleek Adams 13, a former winner in 1994. D&D Tolhurst slipped back to 4th. A combination of unfavourable conditions and a lack of wind had ended her chances on the sailing leg to Hobart. But in the end, just finishing the race was a testament to the soundness of her design, particularly given this was her maiden voyage. And rounding out the top 5, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. The Victorian rookie crew had overcome all kinds of problems just to finish the event. And so it is each and every year. Competitors are drawn to this punishing test, a measure of themselves as much as it is anything else. At the end of 4 cruel days, the feelings are always the same. But as we know, time is a wonderful healer.
Well, I always say never again when I finish, and I'm saying never again at the moment, but yeah, things change.
See you next year.
Maybe.